Hey everyone, welcome to the Wargaming Parrot. I'm David and today I'm going to be talking about 11 tips to make training your parrot easier. I'm joined by Chip and Fish. Chip just loves sitting on my head, so I'm just going to carry on while he does that. Now, training your parrot can be difficult. There's lots of things you need to keep in mind, so many things that can get in the way. So I thought I'd make this video because I get so many questions about training difficulties and, just not being able to get consistent results with training. So I thought maybe it'd be helpful if I just compile some tips from previous videos, some fresh tips you may not have seen before, ones that will help you out with your training problems. Tip number one is something that's so often overlooked when training parrots, and it's something that we constantly get questions about and that people just don't really think about, and that is diet. If your parrot is on loads and loads of seed and it's a generally unhealthy diet, it's like us eating pizza every day and having junk food. So if we have junk food every day, why on earth are we going to want to work for more junk food because we've got it in our diet? So it's the same with parrots. If you're giving them lovely loads of seed, treat sticks, all sorts of fun millet and things in their cage, when you offer it them as a treat when they're training, they're just going to be like, I've got it in my cage, don't really need it. So it's important to get them on the right diet to increases treat motivation for all that junk food. And this is what leads on to doing a treat hierarchy. Assuming your parrot is on a decent diet, you can do a treat hierarchy test with them, which I'll leave a card for now because I've got a video on that. And this test will help you establish what is their most motivating treat. So what is going to be that highest value junk food or treat or sweet, whatever you want. And I don't mean literal sweets like for us humans, I mean, for example, like a sunflower seed or a bit of fruit. And you can then reserve this treat for training, bonding, or whatever else is important to you. If you have this treat and it's reserved, that treat's going to be much more motivating and they're going to be much keener to train for it. So you're already setting yourself up for a success before you've even started your training. Tip number two may seem like a bit of an obvious one, but I think it's important to mention. Make sure that your parrot is actually bonded to you and ready to train. So if you're wanting to train your parrot to do spin tricks and play with toys and all sorts of things, and they're really scared of you, you may want to go back to the basics of bonding work and diet before you get onto the more advanced training. That's not to say you can't do any training with your parrot if they're a bit scared and not bonded. You could do, for example, target training through the bars of the cage. You could get them doing some descents training, all sorts of things like that. But make sure that they're ready for the appropriate level of training you want to do with them. Tip number three, again, leads on from this, and that is to have set goals in what you want to achieve. It's all well and good just sort of like training ad hoc and doing all sorts, but if you have some set goals, say for example with Chip, I want to train him how to take a little plastic shape and put it into a receptacle. That was my set goal for that training. So I did it in steps for him and it helped me have a clearer picture of what I wanted to achieve. Hello fish fish. So it made the training a lot easier. So having set goals can make training a lot easier for you and your parrot. Tip number four is research what others have done. There's a wealth of material on YouTube. I've got loads of videos on training. I know Sophie does. Loads of other YouTubers have some great videos on training techniques. So research, watch and learn from what others have done. I also have some more dedicated specific videos on my Patreon as well, as does Sophie. There goes the boys. So if you want to get even more specific training tips, you can sign up for our Patreon and have a look at that. I will leave a link in the description for that. But research, find out what others are doing and learn from them, because we learn and then we can then impart that knowledge onto our parrots. My fifth tip for training success with your parrots is desensitisation. Desensitisation is just getting them used to things, and especially in this case with training with toys. If you have a toy you want your parrot to work with, you need to get them used to that toy. For example, again, Chip, with loads of the props we use. Before I even start training with them, I just have that toy on the floor and I reward him for just being around it. So it's important to get them used to whatever toy or training item you want to desense them to. And this can also apply for getting them used to toys in the cage and all sorts of things. So make sure they're desensitised to the toy and they're well used to it before you even consider training with it. Also regarding toys, make sure the toys are appropriate as well. You can train with plastic outside the cage. I have some good examples in my Amazon store, which I'll leave a link for in the description, but make sure they're decent to that toy and that toy is also appropriately sized as well. You don't want to be using a giant bowling pin, for example, for a cockatiel. My sixth tip for training success with your parrot is train before breakfast. This is another one of those commonly overlooked easy tips for training success. If you train before breakfast, for example, just before you feed them, they're going to be more motivated for that food. All they've had overnight is some pellets or some seed or whatever else you want to pop in there, and they're going to be more motivated to train. So if you train them just before you give them their breakfast, it doesn't have to be a long session. If you've got a busy routine, then you're more likely to build on that success. My 7th tip is establish a regular routine. Parrots thrive on routine, and while it's good to vary that routine sometimes, or the routine may have to change due to your lifestyle, having a regular training routine, just like I talked about with the schedule, will help you out a lot. So for example, if you have a short training session before breakfast and you have another one later on, it'll be more consistent for your parrot and they'll know what's going on, and you'll probably get more consistent results. My 8th tip is establishing a training schedule. I talked about routine, and this is basically a very similar tip to that, but make it a schedule. So you could even have a little whiteboard or a post-it note and schedule what sort of training you want to do, because it can become a bit confusing. I know it does for us with 5 different parrots. So make that training a routine, either before breakfast and after, and then schedule it. So for example, you want to work on simple step-up training one day, you want to work on target training another day, and just make sure you know what you're doing so you don't get confused or a bit flustered while you're training. Tip number 9 for training success, Chip's joining on the head again, is be consistent in your cues and appearance. It's amazing just how much difference changing your appearance can make to your parrot's motivation or fear factor. This is most often seen when people change their nail colour, wear rings, wear bandanas, change their watch, change their hair colour and that sort of thing. If you change your appearance, it can lead to a fear factor, make your birds less motivated to train, and generally make things a bit more difficult for you. So try and keep it consistent, or at least desensitise them to the changes you've made. This also includes making sure that you use consistent cues when you're training. If you're training Chips when your birds to step up, for example, like that, make sure you do it in the same way. I'm holding my hand out in the same way every time. Chris doesn't want to do it now, so not the best example, but make sure it's very consistent every single time and you don't sort of change it. Same with verbal cues as well. Try and use the same one, for example, step up or spin, etc. Make sure everything's nice and consistent. My 10th tip for training success for your parrot is make sure you don't rush, don't push, and you keep your sessions a suitable length. Generally, a training session for most parrots should last between 2 and 5 minutes. Keep an eye on them, make sure that they're not getting bored or losing motivation, and just don't rush, don't push them, and make sure you keep those sessions a nice, suitable, easy length. My 11th tip is watch and observe carefully. It may sound like an obvious one and one I talk about a lot in lots of videos, but just watch how your birds behave when you're training with them. Pick up any hints of sort of like frustration or tiredness so you can end the training session, and make sure that they're not ready to bite you, and just generally keep an eye on them so you know how they're getting on, and you can sort of adapt your training schedule, maybe do it at different times, and just be adaptable in general to your parrot's needs and also your own as well. So guys, thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you found it useful. If you have any more training tips, please feel free to leave them in the comments. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. Take care. Have a great day.